off.
And blasteth off with the spaceman and King Arthur.
We have liftoff.
He looks so handsome.
He's a somewhat different genius who builds a robot that looks like himself. Too much like himself.
All right, Hermes, that's enough. Hermes, put the girl down.
He's a wrong-way astronaut.
You've got to get us down!
Who forgets to get off the spaceship and rockets back in time from Houston to merry old England.
You have a wrench around here?
Camelot will never be the same.
I got some LPs in there you probably haven't heard.
Thanks anyway.
He's a knight in shining armor, creating chaos in Camelot. And he's coming soon. Walt Disney Productions, The Spaceman and King Arthur.
Do you bite?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Medfield College Film Society. I'm Jeff Crawford. I'm here to gavel in the proceedings. With me, as always, my wonderful society members. We're going to start with Mr. Andy Brown. Andy, how you doing tonight?
Hello, Jeffrey. And it's great to be here. I'm excited to talk about a movie, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
What movie?
Yeah.
You'll have to wait and see. Darby O'Gill, you had all these Irish proverbs. You got anything for us? Any words of wisdom to start us off tonight?
None whatsoever. So maybe I'll just make up stuff as we go.
Yeah. That seems like a trend in tonight's proceedings, perhaps.
Yeah.
Down to Central Florida, Mr. Michael Crawford. My brother, how you doing tonight?
I'm great. The Darby O'Gill quote thing. Now I wish I had gone back and pulled some Churchill quotes.
That would have been
to pepper throughout the proceedings. But I'm doing well.
I'm some Middle English.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we're going to check in with our president down there in the jeweled Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina. Robert McSwain, how's it going?
Michael just stole my little intro there. I was going to give a
boom.
This shall be our finest hour. So,
never surrender.
Never let them steal your intro, man. That's what I always say.
We will talk about the podcast from the halls.
Anyway, something tells me tonight is going to have a little spice on it. Michael, please share with us what we are watching this evening.
It's not Dune. It is the 1979 movie. It's called Unidentified Flying Oddball. This one's directed by Russ Mayberry, who Russ was a longtime TV director. You might be surprised to hear. Did a lot of work in the 60s, 70s, 80s, pretty much every show you've ever heard of. He even did an episode of Thunder in Paradise.
Nice.
Oh. So think about that career. Infamously, he did an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, the third episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, called Code of Honor.
Yes.
Infamous episode from which he was fired midway. So
that's a shame.
Yeah, I had never realized it was the same guy. Anyway, this movie was written by a man named Don Tate, and it was based upon Mark Twain's 1889 novel, A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. This movie was produced by Ron Miller.
Naturally.
Features some music by a man named Ron Goodwin. It stars Dennis Dugan as Tom Trimble. Mr. Dugan is a prolific TV actor who became a director beginning with the 1990 film Problem Child. He's noted for his many collaborations with Adam Sandler, including Happy Gilmore, Big Daddy, Jack and Jill, so many more. He is a four-time Golden Raspberry Award nominee, one-time winner. This movie also features Mr. Jim Dale as Mordred.
My man.
Mr. Jim Dale, a British pop singer turned actor on film and Broadway. He was the first pop singer to record with George Martin. He also wrote the lyrics to Georgie Girl by the Seekers.
Whoa, I did not know that.
I did not know that either. For Disney, he was, of course, the villain also in Pete's Dragon.
Yes.
Where he was equally greasy. And
Doc Terminus, man.
Doc Terminus.
Every little piece.
He also played 3 roles, a comedic tour de force in Disney's Hot Lead and Cold Feet.
That's where I recognized him from.
And now, of course, he is known as the audiobook narrator for all the Harry Potter books.
Yeah.
Jim Dale's an institution, man.
So he has won Grammys, he's won Tonys, and he's also in this. We've got Ron Moody as Merlin. He played Fagin and Oliver. Kenneth Moore as King Arthur, and Sheila White as Alessandri. This movie was filmed at Pinewood Studios, London, and on location at Elnwick Castle in Northumbria, a real castle. And that's pretty much all I've got to say about this one.
Well, I'm sure you have a little bit more to say about it, but wait.
Yeah.
I saw the castle, Star Trek, The Next Generation filmed at that castle once. It was,
Really?
It was Nottingham
For
Castle.
the Q episode where they go into Nottingham?
Yeah.
No way.
But it was just a still. They used a still picture, according to what I read.
Oh, it's just a model.
It's just a model. I went looking because I thought it may have been in a Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but it was not. But it did make appearances in Black Adder, Andy. They used it in Black Adder. It's been in all the Harry Potter movies just about that needed a castle in Downton Abbey. That was an Ellen DeGeneres show shot there once. And last one was Transformers: The Last Night, Michael Bay's blockbuster franchise. Nice. So
that is quite a pedigree.
It's been used quite a bit. The doors are open if you want to shoot a movie there.
I saw it was a Pinewood Studios joint, which
yeah,
a lot of good stuff.
It's a famous studio,
yeah. Well, I haven't seen this movie. And I remember, so we've talked about this before. I don't know if it was online or not, but this movie, Michael, you got to include that it had a dual title, right?
That's true. It was re-released as a Spaceman in King Arthur's Court. That is the title that I don't know why they changed it. That was its title overseas as well upon its first release. Then when it was on TV, it was also under that name, and that's where I got to see it and taped it off of TV. I was thinking, leading up to doing this episode, I was like, this is one, we had it on tape, never really revisited much.
Which was rare.
Which was very rare, and watching it, I kind of got a clue.
It's funny you mentioned that because it was the same situation with me. We had taped it, I'm assuming off the Disney Channel, and I watched it, but I don't think I watched it again much, if at all. And I remembered why.
I remember reading this title because, we would watch VHSs over and over again, as we've mentioned on this podcast over and over again. I remember always reading this and being like, oh, this is like one that Michael taped. It seems a little highbrow for me at the moment, like Spaceman and King Arthur's Court. So, but I should get around to it someday. So I'm getting around to it. Well, Andy, I'm sure you watched Spaceman and King Arthur's Court constantly as a child, right?
Nope. I did not, and I wish I didn't see it this time either.
One of those highbrow Michael Crawford movies.
Yeah, you weren't put off by its highbrow nature, were you? I hope.
I was not. In fact, I thought the premise sounded kind of interesting, and boy, was I disappointed.
Well, I think we should do this, boys. Are you ready to discuss this one?
Please.
Yes. Oh, so much.
Let's go into the world of the Unidentified Flying Oddball. We open to a dark background, and slowly we see a rocket move onto the screen, opening up to reveal a space shuttle. But wait! A giant hand comes and grabs the shuttle. It was only a model after all, guys.
It was only a model.
I got to mention that I think even Buena Vista Pictures was a little gun shy about this because there was no fanfare at all over the title
What?
card.
Yeah, that's a good point out.
I thought the amp on my television wasn't working right or something. I guess I was like,
Yep,
where
same.
is it? Come on.
I did too. I felt like my volume was down on my computer because there's always something wacky or bombastic. Nothing on this one. Also, I wondered if they were intentionally ripping off. Not ripping off, but like goofing on Star Trek, because it intros with like a star field like coming at the camera.
Well, that's exactly
it's got
what I
this
was
kind of
thinking,
Star
yeah.
Trek-y kind of music going on.
Or the James Bond movie. Which
That's
one?
what I
Moonraker.
put down.
Moonraker, yeah.
Well, I was thinking more of You Only Live Twice.
Mm.
Oh,
Where,
yeah, it's kind of
where
got that.
they have the ship and then it comes up and kind of swallows it.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is something I'm going to mention over and over again. There are just so many moments where there's no score. And it was odd not to have a fanfare at the beginning. It's
Yes.
like, what? Anyway, we're in a NASA boardroom with the official logo. And also, again, NASA's given their consent to this one, I guess.
That was a big
Somehow.
question mark for me right out of the gate. It was so NASA signed off on this one.
Got their nice little new logo going
Yeah,
on.
we're in the worm era.
79. They were really rolling around in it over there.
A scientist claims the mission of this rocket is to explore this galaxy and beyond, and that the shuttle will travel faster than light. Its name is Stardust, and it will have an ion engine that can reach Alpha Centauri in 4.5 years. Woo!
That's cooking.
I will point out that I was impressed that the concept of this engine was like a real concept. The fact that it would go like light speed and all this other stuff or time travel was complete insane nonsense. But like the idea of like the fundamental concept of the technology was actually like a real thing.
Right. We've got a crusty senator in on the proceedings, and he is really crusty senator. It's great. He's asking all kinds of questions, and then when it is revealed that NASA intends to crew the mission with 2 astronauts, the senator walks out of the meeting saying, "It'll never happen. No."
It's getting back to the Nettie the Nut politics goofing.
Yes,
Here.
exactly.
Did you guys notice there's, of course, some military officials in there? Did you notice there was one face that stuck out? Did you guys notice who that was?
Yeah.
Yeah, the actor Bruce Boa. He was General Riken from Empire Strikes Back at the very beginning when the Empire when they're trying to escape Hoth. He's the general that gives Han the clearance, and he's also the ugly American from the episode Waldorf Salad on Faulty Towers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Well, the phone rings and we see a man standing on his head, Mr. Trimble, who is working on transcendental meditation. Well, his call is from the same scientist who was giving the presentation, and he says he's taking him off the meditation project and now wants him to build a robot that is exactly like a human. Trimble says, "Yes, sir," and we're off to a thrilling credits montage of him building the humanoid robot. Anybody want to talk about this credits montage?
Well, there's some good sciencey music. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
I like the font.
Yeah, good fun.
Good sciencey font. Clearly, the Disney audio animatronics
Yes.
pile coming in useful on this. There are a couple of things about this. One, it's weird timing because the other day I watched some episodes of MASH, the old television show, one of which this dude was on as Colonel Potter's son, who was running around on his daughter, or son-in-law, I guess. And another where a guy was doing meditation and also standing on his head. Why did people of this era think that meditation meant standing on your head?
That's a good question.
That is my question. Also, that the scientist doing meditation can also switch to building a perfect humanoid robot, which he could have been doing the entire time, but just didn't.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
Pretty revolutionary technology there. Like the audio animatronics, they build it off of a super simplistic wire frame, which cracked me up. It's
like a stick man, figure
come to life. We cut to a scene where Trimble is educating the robot, who is in a duct tape helmet, which cracked me up. He's showing him a slideshow of different things, including a woman in bikini, and gives this thing of like, this is a woman, I am a man. So subplot begin.
I was getting concerned they're going to leave the helmet on the android the whole time.
Right. That's more 80s.
It looked
70s,
like he'd had
80s.
like somebody had been in an accident in
Right.
an old movie. And then
To reveal. Yeah.
Invisible Man.
Yeah.
So we cut to another meeting where the robot who is identical to Trimble is being presented. The robot is named Hermes, and he has a lot of appropriate beeps and boops to go with his voice.
And blinking.
Next, we cut to a launch pad where Hermes is preparing to travel on the Stardust. Hermes evidently is afraid he won't ever come back. Well, the senator is fed up. He's got a lot of important people out there, and his committee chairmanship is riding on this. He threatens to cut NASA's budget way back if they can't fix this. So Trimble is tasked to go and talk to Hermes. And we get a...
Why in person, though?
That is a good question. But we get a really great exterior model shot. Of the
That's
Yeah.
the model team is really sleeping on the switch here.
Yes. As he heads into the spaceship. Indeed, Hermes is worried he'll never come back, and Trimble is giving him the pep talk. He finds that Hermes has a magazine called Playtime. Clear spoof on Playboy.
I don't remember that at all. In fact, it makes me wonder if they deleted it from the TV version, because I don't remember that at all.
Trimble's reaction to that is 30 years is 30 years, I suppose. So,
It makes no sense.
Makes no sense at all. Speaking of making no sense, while they're talking, lightning strikes the launch pad and somehow activates the takeoff of the rocket.
Yeah, they seem pretty lackadaisical about all that. Like, oops, there it goes.
Right. A 30-year mission. They have not prepared for a human to be on board. All of a sudden, Trimble's on board. He also thinks that Hermes is hurt. The scientist says, well, we can't stop everything now. So this is, he's in it for 30 years now.
Good luck.
With the possibility of no return.
It's like you can't abort somehow, and the guy is like on the ground. I love that like mission control is like 5 guys for one thing.
Right.
It's like we never get the shot of mission control. But the guy's like, all right, keep in touch, and cuts off comms. It's there's
He's basically a mad scientist. He's just like, let's see what happens when we send these guys into space.
I think that lightning strike making the rocket take off was the last laugh I had in this movie. Or maybe.
I had 2 laughs in this movie. That was one of them. One comes later. But I did laugh at that. But yeah, you've got your prototype groundbreaking gazillion-dollar space mission, and like you're not even gonna like stay on the radio. You're just like, see you in 30 years. Bye.
We'll see what happens.
All right,
I
guys,
did like
what's
he's
for dinner
going
tonight?
to Vega, just like in Contact. So.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
So we see the Stardust emerging from the rocket, and we catch a slow-mo glimpse of Trimble and the robot floating in midair. This is just so weird. The robot's clearly offline. Yeah, and Trimble has like a blank expression. It's just, why the slow-mo?
I don't know.
And it's a stupid looking ship too. Stardust looks dumb.
I mean, you're
There's
right.
nothing cool about that
You're
design.
right. You're not wrong.
If the ship flies itself, which it does, because it starts going into like hyperspace or whatever, like without them doing anything, why did you need a person on board in the first place?
That's true.
Yep.
Just saying.
So we're like around like 12 minutes in, and I wrote down, I was like, oh my God, this movie is awful.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
no.
only going to get worse.
Let's point out Trimble has a very Kenneth the Page from 30 Rock vibe to him.
Yes, he
Yeah,
does.
That's a good analogy.
So Trimble seems to know how to fix Hermes and sets about to do that as they cruise past the moon. Another great model. Trimble says, I've got to get this thing into orbit, and then does something I can't quite tell. And the Stardust just starts to fly out of the control in loops. A lot of like WTF is going on here moments of them and just kind of hovering around. But we see the Earth spinning very fast outside the window.
But it's like if you had a flat globe, like the cheapest globe you could find, and put a flashlight on it and spun it really fast.
Yes.
It's hilarious. It's like
looks really
Super 8
bad.
movies we would make when we were kids. And his blank expression and his slow-mo space floating.
What is happening here? Soon we cut to we see a maiden feeding a goose, gander. She says she has to head out to Camelot in the morning. She hears a loud boom, and we see the stardust landing in the field beside her and the goose. The lady cries, "It's after us!" and hides behind a rock. So, here we go. Trimble comes out in his spacesuit, and the maiden is in fear. She comes out and throws the goose at him,
which I thought was interesting.
But why is he in a spacesuit? He knows he's going to Earth, and so it's not like...
he wasn't wearing the spacesuit before.
That's a good point.
There's a lot of plot holes here that we're going to unravel. So
it's not a plot; it was just lazy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's a lot of laziness in the writing that we're going to see here in a minute.
Well, she reveals that he's in Cornwall, England in the year 508. Trimble is thrilled and says, "Albert Einstein, you really knew your stuff." Says he's...
And let's go ahead and point out this lady, I guess, Alisande, is that her name?
Yeah.
Yeah, she is not a good actress. This
well, I mean, get in line.
But I was amazed when I looked her up. Like, she had been in like a lot of stuff, like a lot of real stuff. And I'm like, did this movie just like leach out? Did it just like suck the soul out of everybody involved?
It felt like
it is rough. She is rough.
It felt like a lot of people were
She is
kind of
really
phoning
bad.
it in. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that she introduces herself by like, "Oh, you're here, and it's the year whatever." It's like, you never...
Right.
So it's like, where am I? I'm like, "Oh, you're on like Marion Street." It is the year 2022.
In the year of our Lord, 2000.
Yeah, the year of our Lord.
Well, he says he's trying to figure out a way to get back into orbit and get back to the Cape. I mean, of course, this means nothing to her.
Yeah.
She thinks he's a monster because he won't take his helmet off, but he can't take his helmet off. It's stuck.
Why doesn't he just raise his visor up?
Yes! Thank you!
That would be too easy. So, these two and the goose head off for Camelot.
He rolls really quick with the "we're in Camelot" thing.
Yes.
Like, oh, all right. I guess we're in Camelot.
He's going to find the flux capacitor there, I guess.
And she's incredibly calm about this whole thing, too.
Right.
Yeah.
She thinks he's a monster, so they're going to go off together to Camelot.
You pal around with monsters all the time, don't you?
Yeah, I guess. We see they're being watched by a man on horseback and his assistants. This guy looks like bad news. He says, "What's that she's consorting with?" to his little page, and goes down to investigate. Well, the knight comes down and threatens Trimble with a spear, to which Trimble, for some reason, says, "Discretion is the better part of valor." Like, what? And the knight says, "Oh, that's very good. I must tell that to the king." Like, what is that about?
You're talking about the moments that made you laugh, though, when they were walking. Yeah, and she thinks he's a monster. Then like they walk past like another woman.
Yeah, that was good.
That was hilarious.
And she sees the monster. He's like, "Ah!" and takes off. I laughed at that. I was like, okay.
That's true. That was funny.
Yeah. And I remembered another part I laughed that I'll get to. So, okay. I've laughed a few more times. But anyway, they're all off together to go to Camelot. So, we've just got a fellowship now. Got the knight, the page, the maiden, and the astronaut.
It's one greasy night, too. He is just...
Jim Dell is a greasy man.
Dripping with that grease.
Camelot.
It's just a silly place.
It's only a model.
Well, finally they arrive at Camelot. It's not a model this time. The whole time they walk to Camelot, the maiden is telling the story about her father, who was transformed into the gander. So it's her father. She says she's going to Camelot to find Merlin to get him to transform her father back into a person. Now we cut to the court in Camelot, where Merlin himself is doing tricks. He aims to transform a rat into red wine, which impressed the court.
Illusions.
Yes.
It is wine.
The court is most impressed by the knight who is bringing Trimble in. This knight, whose name is Sir Mordred, claims he was set upon by many astronauts in the forest with intention to rob him. He claims he dispatched of the others and saved this one as a curio for Arthur. King Arthur, that is. Well, eventually they decide to burn Trimble and begin to take him away.
And all these knights, though, and they're all old.
Yeah.
There's nobody young.
Yeah,
I
it's like
guess-
every character actor they could find in England.
Yes.
And at least like the set and the costumes, they spent some money on that at least. But
Pinewood, man.
yeah,
Just bringing the heat.
Maybe on parts of it, but later, this looks cheap.
Well, Trimble says he should be allowed to speak his piece. If only he could get his helmet off. He asks King Arthur if they have a wrench anywhere. Arthur says, well, usually we don't give winches to prisoners, but... And then this random lady comes up and grabs a helmet, takes it off to the astonishment of the court.
But does he call her pig? I swear when he calls her out, he calls her pig.
Or was it Peg?
Like, it could be Peg, I guess, but it sounds like pig. and in my head, it's going to be her IMDb credit, pig.
Sheesh. So he is a person after all. Maybe. He begins to explain who his clan is by revealing Columbus's expedition to the Americas. We have a cut, and we see the whole court has fallen asleep while Trimble continues to speak about such subjects as Madame Curie, Fulton's steamboat, and gravity.
It's a reflection of how the audience feels at this point.
I completely
We talk like the running thread of this movie is this dude is terrible at reading the room.
Yes.
He cannot read the room. And it's never depicted as like, oh, this is a thing you must overcome. It's just like, you're terrible. You're terrible.
Yes. Awful.
Okay. So I'm going to play devil's advocate. You know how like sometimes very smart people can be socially awkward?
Oh, yeah.
I'm wondering if this guy is brilliant, works at NASA, and he just does no clue. He just has no clue how to talk to people and read the room and all that.
He's very talented. In certain aspects.
I mean, he can produce a sentient android on the whim, on command. But I would say, if that was like part of like an arc, like a story of growth, of like self-discovery. But no, he's just like an idiot throughout the entire movie.
There's no arc to this story.
Also, not big with the temporal prime directive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, that's
Ixnay on Olympus K.
Yeah. I'm just shocked because Andy, you usually don't have you playing devil's advocate to make something better in a movie. It's we've been brought this low.
He's trying to save himself.
I'm trying. Yeah, I've got to find something.
I'm digging down deep.
Oh man!
Surely it can't be this bad.
Well, understandably, King Arthur has had enough. He sends Trimble away. Trimble screams he can tell them what happens in the Crusades and that Mordred will turn on Arthur someday. There's your prime directive again.
Could have led with that, I think, probably.
Yeah. Well, then Trimble is taken to his cell and is visited by his friend Sandy. Sandy has brought him a hammer to free him of his chains. She says, "You've harmed no one. You should be freed to your natural habitat." So she still seems to think that he's a monster. While he is explaining how he's not a monster, just a man in a spacesuit, which seems like, she should probably think he's a person at this point.
Yeah. I mean, people wear clothes.
Right.
I mean,
and
they
helmets.
have suits of armor and helmets.
Right. Yeah. But he does, in the middle of this speech, realize his suit is flame resistant, retardant even. And while he's trying to explain this to Sandy, he frightens her because, again, he doesn't read the room very well, and she leaves.
Asbestos saves the day.
He then sees through some bars a man on a torture rack. The man is being gently tortured by Sir Mordred, who wants him to confess to killing one of Mordred's deer.
But he asks him such a stupid question.
Yes.
He's like, "Are you okay?" Like the guy's clearly being tortured.
The first thing he sees this guy says, "Are you all right?" And I about flipped the table. But then the guy was like, "That's a really stupid question." Yes. That's all. I was like, "Thank you, movie."
Yes.
You at least covered that base.
So if he confesses to killing the deer, he will have to forfeit all his property. It turns out it's Sandy's father. It's not the gander. Trimble says, right after I'm burned at the stake, I'll tell King Arthur everything. Which, I mean, again, what is wrong with this guy?
Read the room, Trimble.
We cut to a medieval fair. King Arthur asks Gawain if the Wright brothers had discovered radio. He's been having bad dreams. Gawain says, no, that was Babe Ruth, and it goes on for too long.
Uncle Milty shout out, though.
Yes, Uncle Milty shout out. Who was the first in flight, I guess. At last, Merlin cries, bring in the creature executioners.
And there's nothing noble about King Arthur at all.
No, it's kind of like,
He's the most passive. I'll talk about this much going on, but he is like the least leadery king of all. He's just like, oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
To everything.
I'm supposed to say lower the drawbridge.
Lower the drawbridge. Ba-dum-ts.
He has an arc, though.
Yeah.
Trimble comes out in an inflated suit I don't know. Mordred says, he's eaten a hearty last meal. Trimble gets Mordred's page, who is named Clarence, to reach in his leg and take out his Playtime magazine. Says there are some good articles in it. Remember that gag?
I was like, wow, that gag goes that
articles.
far back. How far back does that gag go?
He asks the king if he could speak to him after the execution, which puzzles the court naturally. And while they are tying him up, his suit depressurizes, but off we go. The pyre is lit, and Trimble holds on, waiting for the bonds that hold him to the stake to break.
They got some real flubber suit sounds.
Yes.
With this suit going on here.
Yes.
I was going to say, it's a disturbing image.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
It's just creepy. Maybe it's like the lens they used or whatever, but it's just the way that looks with him just kind of standing there in the fire, like la la la.
I mean, that is some like real stunt work to have a dude, like a real dude in a suit up there.
And cut. Good job. Yay. Right. Disney MGM Studios all over it. Merlin fans the flames when it's not taken. And Trimble, the bonds break. He walks away and salutes Arthur, fully depressurizing his suit, and I guess letting the heat in, where he runs around grabbing his behind, which is just kind of...
Why does his bottom get hot then?
I don't... Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
I assumed it was like the fabric came closer to his skin and he could feel how hot it was. It wasn't clearly explained at all.
Yeah.
But why didn't it do that before when it depressurized the first time?
Yeah. And there's not even like a cutaway to see it like smoking. It's just like suddenly he's reacting and then running around. Very weird.
And he doesn't have an oxygen tank or anything on him, so...
No, he didn't.
How's he pressurizing his suit without...
That would have popped off real nice.
No. Mordred says we have yet to see how this creature resists cold steel, and bids Clarence to fetch his sword, mercifully ending Act 1.
Merlin, do you think this creature has unholy powers?
Impossible! What I mean, Your Majesty, my liege, I may possibly have underestimated its capacities.
I'd rather he was with us than against us.
I'm afraid we've already abused that option. But I can't have it roaming the halls of Camelot. Mordred, it was all you're doing, and I shall be the thing's undoing.
Oh boy, I'm so excited.
Lovely day for a burning, isn't it?
Yeah. and like he doesn't react to anything like it's a thing. Just like I've got a kind of a lame quip for everything, and I'll just not really react. I'll just wander around.
It's just terrible.
Things happening around me. So we got Sandy. She's skulking around the castle. She's looking for Trimble, and then she runs into Clarence. They have a little conversation about whether or not Trimble's a monster. We're still on with that. Sandy says, she's seen all the evidence that he is a monster, but her heart tells her otherwise. She says they've got to help him escape, and she dumps the goose in a fountain from which Trimble subsequently emerges in his spacesuit. He jumped in there to cool off, I guess.
With his visor up, I might add.
With his visor up. He finally figured out how to work that out. They warn him that Mordred is on the warpath, and Trimble asks if there's a back door or a laundry chute for him to escape through. They say, no laundry chute in Camelot. Only the king can order the drawbridge opened. They go running through the castle while they try and figure out a way that Trimble can defend himself. They stop for a gag where he pulls the sword from the stone. We get a nice, ridiculous shot of Excalibur with, glitter light all around it.
Right.
Anyway.
Like the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique.
Yeah, very much. Well, he pulls it from the stone, which proves to Sandy that his heart is pure. So he's got her on lock now. But then she leaves because she can't stand to see Trimble fight. And Trimble prevails on Clarence to help him out. Clarence is a little reluctant because he works for Mordred, but he knows a good egg when he sees it, so he's helping out. Meanwhile, the king and the court are just randomly walking around in cutaways that feel very Monty Python to me.
Yes.
Because, they all just came in from the yard into the castle, but then they'll cut away to, the king and Mordred and the guys just walking through the woods, or now they're walking along the top of a wall, and they're walking through the garden. I'm like, where are you? What are you doing?
Terry Jones would have been a great King Arthur.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Thankfully, they're wandering around so long. This gives Trimble time to magnetize Mordred's sword, because he's in the armory where everybody's swords are. He magnetizes the sword. And finally, Mordred finds the room and shows up to get his sword from the page. And, now it's time for physical comedy jokes about a magnetized sword. It is magnetized in its scabbard.
I started to get really depressed at this point. This was kind of reaching new territory, I feel like, in our experience. We get to the magnetized sword, I'm like, oh my Lord.
How they magnetized it, didn't make any sense to me. Just hammering it.
You align it to the magnetic pole and then hit it with a hammer, and that magnetizes it.
Well, question. So is this tiptoeing into the ketchup scene in Gus yet? Or
I think in some ways for me, this went beyond, because it's
thank you.
And let me tell you why. It's again, there's hardly any music. It's so slow. It goes over the stuff, a la the ketchup scene. It goes over the stuff over and over again. But it's just at least with the Ralphs, it's there's a lot lot This feels the opposite of that. And
there's very little action.
Am I watching?
There's very little editing, I noticed.
Yes.
It's these long
shots.
Long shots, little music. It's so bizarre. It's you're watching the dailies.
It's like a little tableau, because you've got Trimble on one side, you got Mordred on the other, and you have all the people kind of behind him, and they just kind of slowly move throughout the set from one end to the other,
right?
Kind of whacking at each other in slow motion. Well, it starts off the sword's magnetized in its scabbard, and Mordred can't get it out. The king's like, well, I have a knack for this sort of thing. And so he helps Mordred get the sword out, and they go to the main hall. Trimble's hiding behind a tapestry, and Mordred tries to take a whack at him, a big over-the-head whack. And, of course, his sword gets stuck to the back of his armor, so more Pratt falls. And everything metallic is sticking to Mordred's sword. We got goblets, we got plates, we got Gawain's gauntlets. That was kind of amusing.
The other thing, except for that, there wasn't anything funny. It's a cup. You know, it's
and more cups.
There's an opportunity for funny stuff, but it's 4 cups on the sword. It's y'all couldn't have spent 5 minutes being okay, what are some funny things that could stick to the sword?
Yeah.
The props master wasn't really doing his job.
boy.
Well, I mean, and then like Trimble is not really taking advantage of any of this. He's like stumbling around. He takes like the occasional whack at Mordred. It's kind of like a flat bladed whack at his torso. But he's like falling over himself. Clarence the Page is doing more than anything. He's like sticking extra tableware onto the sword. But this again goes to like the weird, like establishing shot, like aesthetic of it. Cause like, it's not like a cutaway to him putting a thing on the sword. It's like, you see Trimble, you see Mordred, you see Clarence, you see the king and Gawain and all these other guys. And like Clarence is just like walking behind Mordred, just like slowly attaching things to the sword as well. Like everybody, you'd think they'd stop him or be like, hey, that's unsporting. But because everybody's in the same shot, it's so weird. So weird. Anyway, they make their way clumsily out onto the castle wall where, despite everything that's happened, Mordred gets a chance to really take a sort of killing blow at Trimble, but he's got one item too many on his sword, and it sends him falling back over the wall into the moat. And the king's just like, oh dear. As the king didn't want there to be a duel, but he's like, whatever. And so he whatevers his way through this as well.
Unbelievable.
Later, we're in the main hall again. Trimble is getting a tour of the round table from the king. Apparently, Sir Lancelot is Sir not appearing in this film. And a couple other guys are not present for the action.
It's weird. That's like one of the only things I remember in this movie was that Lancelot was mentioned briefly. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that line now. Like that's
setting up a sequel.
Yeah. He comes back and is like, what has happened here?
Right.
But why not include him? I mean, that would have made it at least more interesting. All right, here's the famous knights of the Round Table.
Yeah.
It's an odd choice.
Yeah. And Galahad isn't there either. And so it's like the most famous ones are not there. Probably because they would have done something about any of this.
That is a good point.
Instead of just being like, huh.
Maybe there were the young people in the court. Everybody else very old.
The under 60 crowd. They had better things to do. The king really prevails on Trimble. He's like, all right, well, now that we're buds, you can tell me where you really come from. Where are you from? So Trimble starts into another lecture about Columbus again.
Oh, kill it.
And the king is like, no. The king echoes everybody's sentiments, being like, no, shut up. And Trimble finally gets around to telling the king about Mordred's land grab plot, which is the important thing he's been tasked to tell and hasn't to this point. So they head off to the dungeon to investigate, to find Sandy's dad. Of course, Mordred has cleaned the scene. He's scrubbed the evidence. Sandy's dad is gone. And, Trimble's like, no, but he really did it. And then Mordred shows up completely innocently and is like, oh, my honor has been impugned. I demand satisfaction in a joust. The king, again, isn't excited about the idea. It's like, oh, do we have to? But agrees again. Great kinging, Arthur. He's like, I guess we have to. So Trimble heads to the smithy where Clarence is at work. He once again bribes him with pornography to help him escape.
And I was like, I wrote down, I was like, really? We're basing like plot points off of a Playboy now?
Yeah.
I put the old using the Playtime magazine as a plot device routine.
Ron Miller's up in the...
Are we going to come back to this?
Repeatedly.
What is happening with this?
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
Ron Miller in the screening room saying, take that, Walt. Ha, ha, ha.
Right. This is a way into a new demographic. Playtime.
The kids like Star Wars will see what they think about this. He bribes him with his little dirty magazine to help him escape. And Clarence is like, heck yes, I love smut. So Clarence is really into this magazine. He is super psyched about this. The next day arrives, and with it, the joust. Apparently, Trimble's gone missing, and Mordred is mad. The king, again, not seeming bothered about much anything, says, oh, well, if he doesn't show up, he's vanquished. I guess that takes care of that. Just then, however, Trimble shows up in his spacesuit on a horse. Sandy says, oh, he's so handsome. She just has to give him something to take into battle. So she plucks a feather from her father, the goose, and gives it to Trimble, who sort of tucks it behind the ear of his helmet. Trimble's acting weird, though. He blinks and he beeps.
Wait a second.
Could it be? Now, this is like Gandalf coming back at the turn of the tide. This is like when the audience must have been on their feet cheering. Because it's Hermes. Hermes is back, baby. I mean, I bet you'd forgotten about Hermes, but no. Hermes
Is this when like the Queen music starts playing like in a Knight's Tale? Modern music.
Yeah. Oh, Trimble and Clarence are watching from the castle above. Trimble tries to explain to Clarence that Hermes is a robot, again, completely failing to understand anything.
How would you ever explain that?
Down on the field, Sandy is confessing her love to the robot as Trimble listens in on walkie-talkie. And eventually Hermes picks her up and just lays one on her through the helmet.
It's through the helmet. B, the way she he picks her up and he does total stiff arms and her arms are out all the way.
Yeah. It's
very
picking
odd.
up a toddler.
Yes, exactly. Very strange.
Hermes comments, you feel sorry. You feel soft later. which is quite a line. Quite a line, Hermes.
Oh, man.
Oh, Trimble says, well, he can turn Hermes off as fast as Sandy can turn him on.
Mm-hmm.
Snap. Clarence wisely says that they should probably knock it off with the shenanigans and get out of Dodge. Oh, the joust begins.
So we're at the beginning of this movie, Hermes is scared to go into space because he doesn't want to die. But he just willingly goes out there and jousts.
Well, at this point, he's seen so much of the movie, he's lost his will to live.
That's right.
Yeah, Robert, you're applying logic way too late to this film.
He's like, I'm just going to end it fast.
He's just a hornball. That's all he is now.
Mm-hmm. Likes that soft, soft lady. Oh, they're jousting. On the first pass, Mordred knocks off Hermes' arm. The king, of course, seems strangely nonplussed and says, oh, well, I can't intercede. So let's just let it happen. Everyone, in fact, nobody seems too fazed by the arm thing. They're just kind of like, huh.
And it's all so disturbing. This whole thing is completely disturbing. And just to watch, knowing that it's a robot and it's fake, and just to watch the movie. So why would they not be more disturbed?
Eventually, as they get to the point where it's like a dummy, or I guess a dummy, I assume a dummy, or a small person in a headless horseman costume, and with just the lance kind of draped lightly over the arm, just kind of tottering on top of the horse. It's they do another joust pass. This time Hermes loses his head. The body stays on the horse. It's
disturbing.
The king chastises Mordred for not putting an end to the thing. It's this is just mean. And Mordred says his opponent must yield or die, so they do another joust. This time he gets him right in the breadbasket. Hermes gets knocked off and kind of blows up a little bit from the chest-giller area. Sandy goes running out to the body, which is sparking and smoking. Back up in the tower, Trimble's digging around in documents and stuff. He's looking for the Glengarry leads. He gets excited at what he finds, though. He has found the smoking gun. On the field, Mordred is excited about killing Hermes, and Merlin wants the body back to study in his lab. I guess the mountain in Game of Thrones.
Right.
He wants some of that mountain action. Sandy tries to take this opportunity to get Merlin to change her father back from a goose. Finally checking that off her list, but he blows her off. He doesn't have time for that. But just then, Trimble comes running out of the castle. He's got a handful of documents proving that Mordred is trying to take over the kingdom. The king actually does have a reaction to this for once, and finally has the guards try and grab Mordred. But Mordred's on his horse. He just sort of takes off into the forest. Time passes. We find Trimble putting Hermes back together. The king seems kind of grossed out by all the wires and stuff. And Sandy still doesn't get it because, medieval woman at that. And she's still asking Trimble to turn the goose back into her dad. Where she's like, what? Arthur says, this is all great, but he's got to tend to the castle's defense because surely Mordred will be returning and in greater numbers.
So here's a question. Why, maybe I just completely missed it, but why didn't Trimble ever tell her that I've seen your dad? That goose is not your dad.
Yeah.
That's never
be a smart thing to do.
Well, it took him a while after Christopher Columbus and everything to tell the king that like Mordred's trying to take over the kingdom. So maybe his priorities are not what they maybe should be.
It's incredible that he, he wasn't supposed to be. There was not supposed to be a manned mission, so he had a spacesuit, everything. The robot broke. He had the tools he needed to fix the robot. Not only there, but in Camelot, after he had fixed him another time, after he had like caught on fire. I mean, he is very handy.
Yeah, put that head right back on.
Endless supply of materiel here.
Yeah. He should have at least been like sort of Frankenstein Hermes after, just like steampunk cool. Hermes.
There we go.
Yeah, I don't know what he was supposed to eat for those 30 years on board Stardust. That's
a good question. They doesn't seem to care at Mission Control. They're like, oh, well.
Mission Control's like, they don't even know he's gone because they turned off the radio. They think he's just on the way.
See you in 30 years.
So Sandy and Hermes seem a little thirsty for each other. But Trimble switches off Hermes, Commander Data style, and offers to give Sandy a personal tour of Stardust and play her some Fleetwood Mac LPs.
I could not get over the Fleetwood Mac soundtrack or shout out.
Yeah. It's like, if you heard Rumors, it's going to blow your mind. She blows him off, and Trimble asks why the hot and cold bit, which is hilarious since nothing he has done or said should be appealing to any person in the universe anywhere, much less her. But she says she doesn't know who or what she was talking to. She bared her heart to his brother, who's full of wiggly things and smoke. And Trimble once again fails to read the room and starts explaining to her in terms she has no idea about, like the fact that he went to Slippery Rock College and lettered in baseball. She doesn't understand and goes off to find Merlin. I want to talk about how somebody who, by his own admission, barely graduated high school and got a master's degree from Slippery Rock College also invented a self-aware android.
Well, Einstein wasn't great at school as a youth.
That's exactly, you guys just took it right out of my mouth. I had written that down. But yeah.
I love the detail that it's a master's degree. Like, I'd love you like, I have a master's degree in folklore.
I just want to give a shout out to my buddy Dan Putt. He actually went to Slippery Rock College. I just want to say, hey.
Nice.
What's up, Putsy?
Nice. Yeah, I figured there was like one dude in the audience when this movie came out that's like, woo,
Slippery Rock.
Yeah, and he's got a Fleetwood Mac like t-shirt on. It's like, this is the greatest movie ever. Anyway, outside, Clarence is hiding his dirty magazine in a hay wagon.
Enough with this. Good Lord.
It's like, I don't know. I don't even know what it's like because it's like nothing.
It's like a bunch of guys who've never seen a naked woman who wrote this up.
Well,
and it's like, this would be funny.
I mean, why isn't Clarence like asking questions about how pictures are made and why the, in the printing press?
No. None of that. None of that. Louis Daguerre invented a machine because that's what he'd get in. He knows not to ask any questions. Oh, so yeah, he's hiding his dirty magazine in the hay. So I don't know why, but so it can pay off in a gag later. While the king is up looking out for enemies. So some random doughy guy gives a riff on Churchill's Never Surrender speech in Parliament, which is followed by a timpani playing the first notes of Beethoven's Fifth.
Yes.
And Trimble says, well, I'll be darned, which was my biggest laugh of the movie.
Yeah. No explanation.
Yeah, I had a long sigh at that point. I put my notes, Winston Churchill, or Sir Winston, sigh.
I just love, there's something about the editing of it that makes it way funnier because it's like the quickest edited thing in the entire movie. You know, it's like, well, never surrender. Dun, 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 dun. I'll be darned. It just like runs together.
Oh,
I love it. I love it. They're so insane. So they're all trying to figure out when Mordred's going to show up and from where. And Trimble reveals, oh yeah, by the way, I've got this laser gun that was supposed to be for rock samples, but I don't know how useful it would be for that because he uses it from across the castle courtyard to blow up the hay wagon where Clarence's dirty magazine is hidden. So we get a nice, like, anguished Clarence face as the wagon blows up. Easy come, easy go, Clarence. Sorry. And then the king uses it to totally waste one of the castle towers. And it was an actual big old explosion there. So nice job, guys. Gawain says something about it. He's like, oh, did I ever tell you, King, I'm your most obedient servant? The king tells him to cease his fawning prattle, which for some reason that was a line that stuck in my head. Anyway, this whole time, Merlin and Oaf have been watching.
Well, no, yeah. It's
Speaking of the mountain.
This is, Camelot's version of the mountain is Oaf. Beloved Disney character Oaf.
You know who that actor was, right?
No.
Oh, that's Pat Roach. That is the German that Indiana Jones fights when in front of the
shut up
in front of the airplane. Yeah,
He fights Oaf.
he fights the same actor. Yeah,
Multiverse of madness, man.
That is you just blew my mind.
all right.
Oaf
Well, we
has
saved
the
the movie.
pedigree.
There we go.
Yeah. So Merlin's worried. You know, this laser gun thing means the end for their plot. Oaf, meanwhile, crushes an entire apple in his hand and eats it, just kind of smearing it into his mouth. He first suggests he could kill Trimble. He's like, kill. But Merlin says, no, that would cause an investigation, which I thought was an interesting worry. He sends Oaf to get Sandy. He says, bring Sandy to me. And so we end Act 2.
Oaf. It's going to be impossible for Mordred to take Camelot with that American and his magic candle. Oaf, he... No. Arthur would have an immediate investigation. There's more than one way to skin a cat, though it could get pretty sticky. Find that demented girl and tell her the magician will see her in the lower chambers. I will take care of the American. You understand what you are to do, Oaf?
you know, I was just looking. I was like, I wonder how this movie's rated on Amazon. Just let you know, 68% of all reviews for this movie on Amazon.com 68% are 5-star reviews.
It's bots, man. It's bots.
22 are 4-star.
It's impossible.
Then there's 2% 3-star, 3% 2-star, and 4% 1-star. If that doesn't tell you that you should never trust online reviews, then, I don't
There's
even know
no way. No way.
I mean, even from a self-selecting audience, that is impossible.
It's just unbelievable.
Maybe it's just all oaf fans.
It really is unbelievable. I've never quite seen anything like this.
All right, Act 3.
Do it, Andy.
Sandy has come to see Merlin with the goose dad or whatever that he is, and she's accompanied by the oaf. Merlin's secretary says the first visit is 2 gold coins.
Which it was such a stupid gag.
And then here comes Merlin. He comes through the back door here, and he's getting himself ready. He buzzes her in with his little bell ringing contraption. And as soon as Sandy enters and starts talking to the wizard, the oaf slips a sack over her head. And Merlin's all like, "Get rid of that goose." And the oaf tries to bite the poor goose's neck in half.
What in the world?
Yeah, paging PETA on this one because he was rough on that goose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't. Yeah.
And cut. Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Let's pull it back a little bit. Merlin shouts at him not to eat the goose because there will be feathers all over the place. And so Oaf throws the goose out the window or the castle porthole or whatever it is. And the goose lands in the water moat that's just outside. The next day, or I guess it's the next day. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense as far as the way the time moves in this movie. So I'm gonna say next day. The next day, and all spiffed up in his plaid jacket and bow tie, Trimble is looking for Sandy just outside.
He had a change of clothes in there too.
Yeah, I guess so. He asks the page where she is, and he's told that she was supposed to meet him there because she wanted to hear some of his LPs. And it was a great delivery by that.
That was really
that
funny.
actor. That was good. Meanwhile, Merlin's going through Trimble's stuff in his room, and he finds the laser gun, and he gives a really weird line saying the American is fiendishly clever for hiding the laser gun where he did, and yada, yada, yada. But he didn't reckon with the clairvoyant powers of the invincible Merlin. And then he stuffs the gun in his robe, but he had the gun hidden under his pillow.
Yeah, but it's like, oh, who would ever think to hide something there? How clever. It has the cadence of a joke.
All right, I'm going to stop my part here. I'm going to ask this. Was this movie targeted for children? It has to be. It couldn't have been targeted towards adults.
Children
feels like it's
locked in refrigerators.
Tweens. That's what it feels like to me.
I'd say tweens.
10-year-old or whatever.
I mean, Disney always aimed at, quote, family audience, which meant everybody, but this is clearly not anybody over, I mean, a low age would not be into this, you would think.
Well, the Playtime magazine is going to fall flat on anybody.
That's true. That's
got to be in there for some.
But I will say this: I saw some of the reviews from it from the time, from newspaper and stuff. Were a generally pretty amusing family comedy, and I thought I was on another dimension or something because they're this isn't bad. This is pretty funny.
Well, it's the premise alone would, save the day back then. It's oh, clever.
They're it's no Star Wars, but it's amusing,
Yeah, the fact that this came out after Star Wars is really mind-boggling to me.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, I'll keep going. Well, so I guess Tom's given up waiting on Sandy outside the ship now, and he and Hermes and Clarence are in some sort of temporary medieval lab, I guess, where Trimble is experimenting on a model of the Stardust ship, and he's trying to find the right ratio of the necessary thrust to achieve liftoff. Hermes wants to know where Sandy is, and we find out that Trimble actually did wait for 3 hours for her. But he's now done with her, and he tells Hermes to put her out of his mind, which is easier said than done for poor Hermes. Trimble ignites the booster for his model ship, and it goes flying all over until King Arthur and Sir Gawain, I don't know how you pronounce it, Gawain enter And Gawain pulls out a dagger and stabs the ship and apologizes to Tommy. But before they can talk about it, Tom hears a goose just outside the door, and he finds Sir Winston carrying the goose that he'd found out in the moat. And he says he'd make a splendid supper. But Trimble stops him and tells him to keep the goose or gander in protective custody. And then the curious Trimble asks where the girl is, referring to Sandy, and Sir Winston says there was no girl, but he did hear a woman scream, and Clarence says he saw Sandy with Oaf headed to Merlin's chambers. And Tom lets out, in reference to Merlin, he says, like, that quack, and the goose kind of chuckles to himself, and this is such a stupid movie.
Really, I am, at this point, I'm just very bleak. Very bleak.
I mean, it's such so dumb that, like, when there's an actual, like, joke where you it's like, oh, this was like an intentional joke, like the secretary outside Merlin's office, which, I mean, is like again, like kind of like a Monty Python-ish joke. I mean, it is noticeable, recognizable as a joke. It's like jarring. It's like, who put that in there?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's an actual kind of a joke. And nothing else is.
And the scene, I think there was the sight gag with the sign, where they had to stay off the spacecraft.
Oh yeah, by the federal government, by command of the federal.
This means you, Merlin. I mean,
federal government. Yeah,
yeah. It's self-aware for sure at times. Well, Tom tells the king that he thinks they're in trouble. He runs to his own room and finds that his laser gun is gone. He then explains to everyone that Merlin and Mordred are in cahoots. But he has a plan, and he needs the king's armor. The reluctant King Arthur reminds Trimble that he's a prisoner, but agrees to let him borrow his workday armor. But Trimble wants his Sunday go-to-meeting armor, which is the shiniest he has. Arthur agrees and sends Clarence to fetch it. Then sometime later, King Arthur and Sir Gawain and a group of men are gathering around the Stardust ship when the ship's front ramp opens up, and out rolls Trimble driving the Stardust rover, covered from the neck down in the king's golden armor, looking like C-3PO. Yeah, King Arthur doesn't get all the fuss over this girl, saying that he can get Tom another girl very easily, but Tom prefers this dingy one, and
he can get him 5 girls, more comely and cooperative.
Yeah. Yeah. After putting on his helmet, Tom calls for the drawbridge to be lowered, and the king quickly corrects him, saying only he can lower the bridge, with a kind of like a told you so from Clarence. But then Tom apologizes to the king, saying he's in a hurry, and the king calls out for the bridge to be lowered, and Trimble drives off in the Stardust lunar rover. Well, that night in the woods at Mordred's camp, Mordred, Merlin, and their men are scheming how to get inside the castle, and a page interrupts them, saying something approaches the camp that has 2 eyes that light up in the night and makes strange breathing sounds. And sure enough, it's Tom and his rover, and he declares that he's come for Alisande. And on cue, here comes Alisande, who was not tied up or anything. She just comes running. So some pretty poor... they weren't worried about her escaping.
The blocking throughout this whole thing is super weird.
So she comes running up to Tom, saying that he shouldn't have come because they plan to kill him. And Merlin tells Tom there's no use fighting because the magic candle, a.k.a. the laser gun, that Mordred is holding will burn a hole through them. Mordred asks Tom if he has any last words, and of course he does, annoyingly. Tom tells Sandy that he really grooves on her, which is gross. And his idea of heaven, this is where I really almost punched my TV. He said his idea of heaven would be to split a pizza and a 6-pack while watching the Super Bowl on television and maybe smooch a little at the half. And Alisande just stares at him because she's an idiot. And
she doesn't know
idiot. And she doesn't know what any of that stuff is.
Really groove on you.
I really groove on you.
Yeah, but then, just like an idiot, she doesn't respond until she just says, "Any news of father?" And it's just painful.
Always.
I hate this movie.
But first, who would, even if she knew what he was talking about, like just a random woman of contemporary, be like, "Man, my idea of heaven's to split a pizza and a 6-pack while watching the Super Bowl on TV."
Right. it works in like There's Something About Mary, but that we know that's fiction.
Right.
Ugh. Yeah. Anyways. Well, so she's like, yeah, any news of father? And Tom is like, well, didn't you hear me? I said I love you, which first of all, no, he didn't say I love you. And then second of all, come on. I mean, this is awful. Sandy, go ahead. All right. Sandy says if it's between him and the oaf, then she'll take him. Tom's like, great. And instructs her to pull down his visor and get behind him. He tells Mordred to fire at will, which of course, Mordred does. And the laser beam reflects off of the shiny golden armor that Tom's wearing, and the beam hits a tree, sending it crashing to the ground and crushing some of Mordred's men. Merlin pleads with Mordred to stop firing, but Mordred fires at Tom again, and again the laser beam reflects off and hits another tree, sending it crashing to the ground, taking out a tent and landing on Mordred this time. Trimble and Sandy take off on the rover, going about, a blazing 5 miles an hour. Yeah. And Mordred's men fire their arrows and throw spears at the escapees, and with a spear flattening the rover tire, ending the getaway after like 10 feet.
I mean, rovers have inflatable tires. I mean, I know it doesn't matter. All of this is ridiculous.
Okay, so what I said earlier about the blocking of this scene, this is like their big, exciting getaway. And any of the people walking on foot could walk faster than the rover and straight up murder them. But they don't. And they get like 10 feet and the thing just kind of grinds to a halt. And Mordred comes up. I mean, they were just trying to kill him. Everybody's got weapons. But Mordred's just like, oh, I'll take care of you later.
Right.
And just leaves. It's like, just kill him.
Yeah, he just tells Oaf to hold on to him.
Yeah.
And then he's like, he's going to head off. And I'm like, what are you doing? This is very James Bondy in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Where the villain just like trusts that it's taken care of and he leaves. Yeah. Anything else to say about that stupid sequence?
It's stupid.
I'd already forgotten a lot about it. So
yeah. All right. So Mordred tells, of course, the Oaf to watch him, and then him and his men head off to the secret passage under the castle to begin their uprising. And the following morning, Merlin, Mordred, and their men have reached Merlin's chambers without being seen. But then, like, this is weirdly, the edits here are kind of strange, because then immediately it just jumps right back to Mordred's camp. And it's the next morning, and Sandy and Tom and the Oaf are in the exact same position as they were when we last saw them. So the Oaf has just been circling them for hours. Hours.
Unreal.
Oaf, follow rules.
Finally, Tom offers the Oaf something to eat. Something, I guess he could have done this hours ago, but now he's decided to do it now that there's, it's morning light. And the Oaf goes for it, but it's a trick, and Tom hits him with the rover's mechanical arm, and it clutches his throat, preventing the Oaf from getting up. Then Tom tells Sandy to sit on his lap. She's like, I beg your pardon, which I kind of laughed a little bit there. But she finally does, of course, under protest. And then suddenly the rover's chair turns into a jetpack chair thing.
Ooh. Oh, boy. Here we go.
They take off into the sky, flying back to Camelot. And it's like, everything in my body is just hurting. Just reading this back.
And she's like, are we going to your nest? My God, woman.
Gosh, you moron, no.
Still thinks he's a monster.
Mordred and his men draw their swords and begin their attack. Of course, we've jumped back to Camelot. And King Arthur has his armor on, and he looks really unkingly. Yeah. And he's accompanied by Sir Gawain, who spots Tom in the sky. And then in a pure just slapstick moment, as he points to Tom, he unknowingly hits one of Mordred's men who's climbing the gatehouse wall, and he hits the guy goes flying in the water.
Look, God. I would say this is the most anticlimactic castle invasion ever put to film.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just like they all just kind of walk in and are just kind of like walking around.
Yeah, it's so slow paced.
Yeah. Tom sets down Sandy with Clarence, who's holding that dumb goose for some reason. And then he takes off again up in the air while the moron Sandy's just waving goodbye to him. It's like, do you not realize what's happening here? There's an uprising and you're like, bye. It's like, have fun storming the castle kind of thing. Tom notices that Arthur's men are looking the wrong direction. Instead of looking at a man in a flying chair, which would blow their minds, they're all looking out over the castle wall and don't.
They all seem to accept the.
Yeah, they don't notice Mordred and his men sneaking up on them. But instead of calling out a warning, Tom takes matters into his own hands, and he grabs a mop that just happens to be there. And it's within his reach, too. And he takes off kind of to joust Mordred as he's climbing the castle stairs. Mordred, who most certainly would have noticed a flying man, he is caught off guard. And
it's a great POV shot, though. A mop's eye view of Mordred, like, reacting at the mop coming at his face.
Yeah, the mop comes right at him and smacks him. And then it creates this domino effect with, Mordred falls into the guy behind him, and they all fall down.
And that's
it goes
very
on for
Monty Python.
Yes.
That's super Monty Python.
But it went on way too long. It was like absurd.
It became Landis level. Yeah.
Landis level.
And I think I rolled my eyes so hard during the sequence that I pulled something behind, like right eye. Mordred and his men quickly recover. I mean, super quickly. And now they're they're on the gatehouse wall, and they're easily dispatching any resistance that comes up. And then some Vikings approach the drawbridge with horned helmets and waiting to enter. And Arthur gives out a rally cry. And to your point, Michael, with action sequences that would put Braveheart to shame, everybody is fighting. And Mordred's men are able to lower the drawbridge, allowing the Vikings to enter the castle. But before they can all enter, Tom flies up and cuts the rope to the gate, preventing any more from entering. And you can clearly see the lines holding up the chair.
Oh my gosh, multiple times. It's like they're not even trying. I've never seen that in a movie. That bad.
Yeah, especially like a Disney movie.
Disney movie.
Yeah.
Well, the idiot King Arthur is just standing there on the castle wall, thanking Tom and holding the sword. And he's holding his sword like a French bread or baguette or something.
I had that at this exact point. I was like, the king just stands there and watches. Like, great job, king.
Then here comes Sir Winston, another Sir Winston moment, who says, "Never have so many owed so much to one man."
Like, it was like, what? And then somebody's like, "Oh, what a nice thought."
Yeah. Then Mordred finally notices Tom flying around and casually takes a crossbow from one of his men, who's like, "Oh, yeah, here, you have this." And he fires a bolt at Tom, hitting the jetpack, which sends Tom out of control, and he eventually grabs a hold of a rope hanging off the side of one of the castle towers.
Let me just say, this jetpack thing is just the perfect device for this movie, because it's extremely slow, looks bad,
poor design.
It goes on forever. It makes no sense. It's seemingly endless fuel.
It's slowly crashing to the ground.
Yes.
There is more standing around in this battle than any battle. It is the most boring action ever.
Ugh.
Just like standing around watching fight.
Then there's some more silliness with King Arthur and Gawain, who accidentally knocking over Mordred's men. And then later, Arthur hits a boulder that was shot from a catapult as if it was like a baseball with Excalibur.
Hilarious.
Yeah, I about fell over at that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like from a totally different movie. That's from like, I don't even know what. Like Benny Hill.
Yeah. Yakety Sack would have been great.
But it was so slow compared to Benny Hill. It was like, again, it was very slow.
Dorn.
All right, well, hang with me, guys. We're almost done. Clarence and Sandy see Tom hanging on the rope and lower him down to the ledge, where he calls to Hermes over the walkie-talkie. Hermes is in the Stardust ship. Tom tells him to start firing rockets up, and the blasts the blast from the rocket sends Mordred's men kind of rolling along on the ground. Merlin, witnessing all of this, says the Americans' wings need to be clipped and approaches the Stardust ship's front ramp in an attempt to stop Hermes. Well, Trimble, who's now dangling from the rope once again, almost looks like he's choking, and because Sandy and Clarence are like dropping him because they can't hold the rope much longer. Trimble, he sees Merlin sneaking up on Hermes, and over the walkie-talkie, he begins to sing the United States national anthem, causing Hermes to immediately salute, smacking Merlin in the process, sending him rolling down the ship's ramp.
Glad he had time to get that programmed in.
Yeah, I keep saying this. It's so slow. Everything that happens. It's like Merlin creeping into the ship. And then he like puts his head up like behind him before he does anything. It's like goes so slow.
And it's like, what is he going to do to him? I mean, I don't know what his plan was. Going to like stab him. I will also point out there is a lot of heroism by remote control in this movie.
Oh yeah,
a lot of people getting other people to do their work for them in this movie. Like Trimble's basically just telling Hermes what to do, and Hermes is doing everything.
Yeah. Well, here we go. Here's a perfect example. Hermes closes the hatch to prevent any more uninvited guests.
Which why didn't that happen?
Well, yeah, why was that
right? Tom tells him to turn on. Here we go. Tom tells him to turn on the ship's, I'm going to put air quotes, magnetic fields, and set them to pulse. And due to all the metal armor, Mordred's men are all unable to escape the magnetic pull and eventually come crashing into the ship.
Before this, he has to turn on the system's on switch, which turns on all the systems. Are you going to get to that?
No, I just glazed over because I wanted this thing to end.
There was a giant systems on switch, which cracked me.
Well, then it's like this 80s era EQ is the controls for the
it's all faders. Like audio faders
from a soundboard.
But it's all done in like graphic style of if you were making a playground for your children and just had the things you can get, like the letters you get at the hardware store to put on like your mailbox.
Right.
And just put it on like wood panels to be like power on.
Star Wars has been out for 2 years.
It's inexcusable.
It's just crazy. Let's see. Yeah. So the pull is so strong that even the armor that Tom is wearing. Oh, finally back up. As Mordred's men are like being pulled, the acting here, they're just like running towards the ship and then falling down.
Yeah.
I mean,
could like speed it up or something, but it happens over and over and over and
oh
over.
My gosh. Again. It's unreal.
The magnetic pull is so strong that the armor that Tom is wearing is now being pulled towards the ship. And as Tom is relieved of each piece of armor, his t-shirt and underwear are exposed, and Clarence tells Sandy not to look. While Tom is hanging on for dear life, Mordred sees his opportunity to slice Tom in half. I was like, all right, here we go.
The end.
There we go. Let's kill this thing. But before he can, Tom is freed from his armor finally and drops to the ground. And now Mordred is suddenly being pulled into the ship's magnetic field, and he comes crashing into Merlin, who just regained his footing. And it's just, it's worse than Three Stooges. I mean, it's just
awful. At least with Mordred, they did some wire work and like flung him through the air. So I'm like, all right, at least throw some people around and not just like running at the ship and then hitting your head and falling down.
Hermes cuts the power to the magnetic field, and the rest of Mordred's men are rounded up. And Tom has saved the day, and he has saved Camelot. Well, while standing in his socks and his undershirt and underwear in front of Stardust, Tom tells King Arthur to take him downtown and book him. You know, that's a real good reference there. The king thanks Tom for saving his kingdom and raises his sword, yelling victory as his men cheer. Well, a little bit later, Tom is given his own place at King Arthur's round table with his name carved into the wood, Sir Tom Trimble. Tom says they're never going to believe this at the Cape, but then he realizes that he has a Polaroid camera with him, and he takes a big group selfie.
I'm glad that like real NASA didn't rely on Polaroid for its photography.
Right.
You see these like great shots of the moon or like Earth from space, and I'm glad it's not a Polaroid.
Brought to you by Polaroid.
Yeah.
Tom and Sandy step aside to say their goodbyes, and Tom lists all the things that he'd like to show her, like his 10-speed and Space Mountain.
The 10-speed bike, yeah.
Why would you say you want to show someone your 10-speed?
Because he's 10 years old. I mean, he has to be in his brain. Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. He doesn't know.
Yada, the end.
But he doesn't know if she would survive the trip. Worrying
Why? Why?
Yeah, nowhere in science that's like not a thing that would occur to you to worry about.
Exactly. So worrying that Sandy might age 1,000 years before they re-enter, but then somehow the dim-witted Sandy suddenly understands Einstein's theory of relativity and thanks Tom for helping her father. And she's like, I understand. And I'm like, oh, you do? You thought he was a monster for the whole movie, and
then
now you understand
explain it
that?
back to me, Sandy. Explain it back to me.
Yeah, so she thanks him for getting her father back, which he never did explain that there was never a problem.
That was
just done.
And then she hands him a note to give to Hermes, and Tom kisses her on the cheek, saying goodbye. Well, now we're at the launch site, and everyone has come out to see Tom and Hermes off. Clarence is wiping down the ship's windshield. Tom thanks him for all his help and gives him a little mini American flag as a gift. And Clarence walks over to the onlooking King Arthur, and Sir Gawain, showing them his new gift, says that it's from Tom's Uncle Sam. So close to being done here. Okay.
But I like that the king's like, oh, that's nice.
And that's that's the second line that I remembered was the Sir Lancelot and the Uncle Sam line. That was the only two lines in this whole movie that I recalled.
It's very selective.
Yeah, I don't understand either.
Yeah. I also I bet Morton Thiokol in real life was really mad they didn't think about using like barrels for solid rocket boosters. They could have saved so much money on the shuttle.
Sandy, who's kind of now standing off with some Scottish cows, waves one last goodbye to Tom as she fights back tears. Tom gives the thumbs up to King Arthur, who calls out the launch sequence and flips some switches. I don't know. None of this makes sense. And he initializes the launch, and the Stardust takes off. And the crowd cheers and waves goodbye as the ship heads into the sky. Tom hands Hermes Sandy's note, which basically says, Hermes, you're cool, but I like Tom better. And Hermes just sits there with this blank look on his face, I guess contemplating how he's going to kill Tom for stealing his girl.
That's what I thought. I was like, don't tell like your robot. Don't give that. I mean, he could be a murder robot. You don't know. It's going to be like how Maximilian started.
Absolutely. So the two start to go forward in time when Tom hears a goose honking and makes a few quips about Sandy's, again, father, air quotes, and then realizes that if it was safe enough for the goose to come with them, then he could have brought Sandy too. All right, so close. Almost there.
Gosh.
Tom instructs Hermes to turn the ship around, and they head back to go get Sandy so she and Tom can live happily ever after. And then Hermes smiles, knowing that he can now kill both of them together. And this brings this god-awful film to a close. The end. Yes! We did it! I hate you guys for making me watch this.
Hey, man, I'm not to be implicated in this.
Robert,
it's one man who is responsible for this.
That's the end of the movie, folks.
What on earth are you going to do with her? You mean, what am I going to do with her on Earth?
Live happily ever after. Isn't that what you're supposed to do in a situation like this?
Seemed like such a good idea at the time. I don't.
It really wasn't a good idea, was it?
No, it wasn't. I'm not going to try to defend it.
Who could believe
Robert.
Russ
That's what I
Mayberry
want.
would
I want an apology.
get fired from Star Trek Next Generation? Who could believe it?
I don't even know what to say about that.
What an oddball, am I right?
Well,
Oh my gosh. What did Leonard Maltin have to say about this movie?
Leonard Maltin had. Let me just clear this out. Leonard Maltin had nothing to say about this.
good.
Leonard, I even looked up in his movie guide to see, and it just gave a brief recap of the plot. It didn't even editorialize at all. But it got more than 1 star. I'm like, Leonard.
Yeah, I had to find out what Leonard said before our usual time tonight.
Yeah.
I need to catch a breath before I rate this thing because I've got some things to say.
Let it out, buddy.
It's time for us to rate this thing with our unique grading scale. Robert, what is our rubric for tonight?
Well, it's the big plot device in the movie. It's the Playtime magazines.
Fitting. Start with plot and writing. I'm going to go first. 1. If I could give it lower than a 1, I would. But in our scale, that's an F. Awful. Just terrible. Robert?
It's a 1. There's no question. I guess I'm like with Michael. I remember seeing it, and then when I was looking at movies to do, I was like, what? I thought it was called Spaceman in King Arthur's Court. And then they changed the name. And I thought, well, I watched it. I don't remember it being bad. But it can't be that good either. So here we are.
You were right about that. Right on 1 count.
Michael, plot and writing.
It's funny when I was what am I going to rate this? And I was like, could I give it a... Then I realized that the only remotely redeeming things about it are the stuff from the thing that it was based on. It's
right.
the idea is a fun idea. It could have been a good movie if everything about it that was in it was different. But the concept, that's a great... I'd love to do a remake of this, man. It could be a fun thing. But man, what is not Mark Twain is a 1.
It is an embarrassment to Mark Twain. Oh my gosh. Andy.
1.
Is that the goose? Is that your father, the goose? 1.
We're going to stick with Andy for casting and acting.
1. Actually, I will say this. I think out of everything, Jim Dale was a bit of a bright spot. I was like, okay. He was at least, I think, trying to do something there. But still, not enough to bring it past a 1.
I agree. I'll just jump in there because I have a soft spot for Jim Dale because of his music stuff and Doc Terminus. So I was like, okay, well, Jim Dale will be clearly a good bad guy. But man, Sandy, so bad. Oh. Trimble is so bad. Yes. It's just painful. Arthur is so bad. Robert?
It's another 1. Yeah. There's no, I couldn't find anything in it really. I mean, yeah.
And Michael.
Yeah, it's a 1. It's I totally agree. Jim Dale is the only thing that has a pulse in the entire movie. Yeah. And, I feel bad because, if he had been allowed to do things, but they kind of smother him.
Right.
He doesn't even actually really get to do anything at all.
No. Yeah, when I first saw him, the first scene, I was like, oh, this will probably, this movie hasn't gone well so far, but this will probably get better. Did not. All right, Michael, we're going to stay with you for production value.
Well, I did like that they shot on location and that they did have an actual, a real location, and there were some nice castle shots. And man, just all the space stuff was so terrible. I'll give it a 2 for shooting on location. And some of the castles stuff was, they didn't film it well. They didn't shoot it nigh well, but at least they put some money into it.
Okay, Andy?
1. Again, Star Wars had been out 2 years before this. They could have done much better. They didn't even try. I mean, parts that may have looked... yes, they'd shot it on location, which is why they should be even more embarrassed that it didn't look better than it did. 1.
They had a goose, though.
It's true. Animal actors, Robert.
Yeah, well, the goose acted pretty... I love the shot of him getting thrown out of the window. That was, the goose is like, oh, that's pretty nice. All right.
Robert?
I was trying to figure out how I was going to rate this movie. If there was anything I could give it higher than a 1, and I was thinking, okay, well, the production value, it's iffy, and because the scenes, the castle stuff, but then we got to the wire scene with the rocket pack, and that's, it's another
I agree,
another
man.
1.
Yeah, I've never seen that egregious. Multiple shots.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like 4 shots at least I saw with the wires.
It was like somebody's
Just
home
plain as
movies
day.
of something being filmed or something.
I mean, I've never seen that. So despite what Michael said, I will have to give it a 1. And I thought the music was bad,
Yes.
which is rare. That is a rare, usually the music is redeeming in a lot of these movies. It was bad.
Yeah.
And it was not in the movie enough. I've never, it was just moments of silence. Definite 1 for me. And we'll, I'll keep on for the entertainment value. This, I think, is the worst we've ever seen. I think it's worse than Ollie Hop Noodle and worse than Gus, which are the, it was so boring. They would linger on these notes that were so boring, and the jokes were terrible. 1. 1 for me. Andy?
1. Got nothing to say. 1.
Yeah, Michael?
1. I agree. It is by far the most boring one we've seen.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, Ollie Hop Noodle had like an aggressive edge to its badness.
Yes.
It was just like kind of an assault upon you.
Yes.
This was just boring.
Yeah. I mean, I think I fell asleep twice in this one, which I never do. I was like, and I had to rewind it, which was so painful. I was like, I know there's not going to be anything in this. We're going to end with Robert, who picked this movie for us.
So I watched the trailer for this movie, and then I guess maybe a month before we watched it, and I went, "Oh no!" Like I said, this is. I don't remember any of the space sequences in this movie.
Maybe you should vet these movies a little bit more, Robert.
Really? And then I was like, "Oh man!" So then I was getting ready to watch it because I'll watch these movies twice. Like I'll go once through to kind of get an overview of the movie and then figure out where the acts are and everything. And I was so relieved that I didn't have to do a plot or an act in this movie.
Must be nice.
So I was like, oh, I get to cruise through this one at least.
I mean, we're your friends, Robert. Why would you do this to us?
Oh boy. So,
it makes me want somebody to cut a trailer of like mixing this and the black hole together. Of just like gothic space horror, and then you've got Tom Trimble blinking to beep sounds.
I've got some. I'm gonna do a video with this one on YouTube. I have some ideas for some stuff I'm gonna do with it. So
what are you giving it?
Oh, it's a 1. Yeah, there's no. I mean, I'm not gonna. I'm never gonna watch it again. I'm not even gonna recommend it to anybody to watch.
Why would you?
Although I do have I have a movie club that I watch, and they love horrible B movies. And I mean,
this would be an interesting. Would this work as an MST movie?
I need to throw this at them and see what they think. And the irony is that it's turned into this B movie club, and I won't watch the B movies. I'm not going to watch, Slaughter at Blood Lake. I don't care. And so I'm going to suggest we watch this one, and I'm not going to watch it with them, though.
I was just thinking, like, as I was watching this, I'm like, this is clearly, I mean, obviously it is a low point for Disney, but I'm like, is this the low point? Because there's stuff after that was bad. I mean, you've got like Herbie Goes Bananas, which we've watched and obviously hated, but this is just so inept and boring.
Yeah, it's so much worse because even Herbie Goes Bananas, like it sort of starts coming back around where it gets it's so bad it's laughable.
It's like campy.
Yeah.
And there's no visible wires as a man slowly putters around a courtyard of sleepy English people.
Right.
So bad, man. So bad.
I feel like I need to go back and redo all my scores.
I know.
For all the movies that we've done, and just now knowing that this is how
I think
bad
we
it is.
I think we hit rock bottom. I think Michael's right. I think this is it.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
And there may be, I can think of stuff that's like equally bad, but nothing that's as boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
68%.
Like slow paced.
When did Ron Miller get canned? Was it
83?
83. So he had 3 more years left in the tank after this one came out.
Yeah, because there's other bad stuff, but just the slow. It's like just like molasses. Like everybody, and the character, like every character is the worst.
Absolutely.
2/3 of the reviews on Amazon. If you're a listener and you like this movie, you have to write in and tell us why.
Please do. Please.
I want to
do.
know. Tell us what you found just so appealing about it, because none of us can see it at all.
Now we have a listener. I'm sure will weigh in.
I would love.
I don't think he's going to like it. I don't. To
if
his
you're a
credit,
defender,
I don't think he's going to defend
know.
it, but he'll have something to say about it.
All right. Well, it's time to punch this into our computer, the War Tuna Shoes, see if we have a new leader in the clubhouse here.
All right. What do you guys think? You think we got a new leader?
Well, we rated Gus on a different scale,
That's
but
true.
I would think so.
This might have a divide by zero error that will crash the computer.
All right. So we've done 29 movies now.
Wow.
Gus came in at. But by the way, we will get this online. That's by season 4. That's this summer. It'll happen. But Todd,
you're gonna have to watch all the movies that you assigned for us before you do them again.
I have to watch all 29. All right, so
we don't want another mistake.
We've done 29 movies. The rock bottom was Gus with a 1.2, and the Unidentified Flying Oddball came in with a 1.06, with Michael's Lone 2 giving it that little bump there above a straight F.
A new low.
I think we have.
Gentlemen.
I don't think we can get. I don't want to say never, but I don't.
I'm pretty sure this is going to be the low point.
I think it is.
If this is lower than like Herbie Goes Bananas, there are only a couple in there super obscure, like
Herbie,
Midnight Madness and things like that.
Well, people have asked. People have requested Midnight Madness, and
really,
I don't know about that one.
It would be entertaining to do. It would be more entertaining than this.
Okay.
It may be just as enraging, but more entertaining.
Herbie Goes Bananas did a 1.44.
That's right.
And Boatniks did 1.8. And those are the ones we've had. Those are the Fs.
Herbie Goes Bananas looks like Lawrence of Arabia compared to like this.
There's a scope to it that
they went to all these places and
there's production value to it.
There's
some
good music
value.
again. Yeah.
Boatniks is like the Hunt for Red October compared.
And I picked Boatniks solely for the submarine. Like that really was what stuck with me as a kid. But nothing about this movie stuck with me except for that Sir Lancelot wasn't in it, and they made a joke about Uncle Sam at the end. That's the only memories I have of it. They came back to me because I'd blocked them. But
oh boy,
it came back on me.
I hope I can block all of this.
My supper came back up on me.
All right, gentlemen, we are in the home stretch. Only 4 more movies to go. A friend of the podcast, Phil Smith, brought several movies to my attention back in December. Maybe they'll make it into season 4. They included Monkeys Go Home from 1967 and The Horse in the Gray Flannel Suit from 1968. Anybody seen those?
Dean Jones in both.
Okay.
R.I.P. Yvette Mimieux, who's in Monkeys Go Home. She just passed away. And in Black Hole. R.I.P.
Like Phil does on occasion, you can email us at info@medfieldfilm.com or find us on the social media platforms at medfieldfilm. Give us some suggestions. Maybe they'll make the cut. And between emails and social media interactions, you can get ready for our next episode. It's an Andy favorite, but it's a modern twist on it. We teased it in the season preview. Andy, what's our next movie?
Freaky Friday.
There you go. So,
yeah.
Talk about a drink of fresh, cool water.
Yes. Yes.
So my kids listened to the podcast of Freaky Friday and went, well, I haven't seen this one. So they went and looked it up and they watched the Lohan one. They're like, this seems different. And I was like, oh, well,
yeah.
Yeah. And I had never seen it until they watched it. I sat down and watched it with them. So that's my, I was maybe 2 years ago. So.
Excited about that.
Should be entertaining.
Yeah. And now, a message from the President of the United States.
We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won, and they must be won and used for the progress of all people. For
graphic design,
like nuclear science and all technology, has no conscience of its own. Whether it will become a force for good or ill depends on man. I do not say that we should or will go unprotected against the hostile misuse of
drop shadows
any more than we go unprotected against the hostile use of
bad fonts.
But I do say that
good graphic design
can be explored and mastered without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ around this globe of ours. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in
graphic design
as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind. But why, some say,
Todd Naperick,
why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose
Todd.
We choose
Biden graphics.
We choose
Todd Naperick and Biden graphics.
And disticate and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
This message was brought to you by Biden Graphics. That's BYDAND graphics.com. Todd's going to make you look good. Check out our Upwork. So from all of us to all of you, we look forward to watching another movie and seeing you next month with Freaky Friday. So long.
Proud are we of mighty Redfield, our mother dear. All your sons and daughters hail to thee, Redfield College of Technology. And while we hold your banner high,